Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with some juice to get you through the long night. Today is another episode of Overwatched. And today, my special guest is... Special guest?
Oh, hi. Hi, Gray.
What in the...
It's me. It's Joe Magician. I'm back again. Woo!
Yes, so today my special guest is Joe Magician, and we are going to be covering Season 1, Episode 3, Lord Snow. So, in the beginning of the episode, Ned Stark is coming up in King's Landing, and he is just looks like he can't stand it there already.
I noticed that when I was watching it back, he walked in through the gate, and there was palm trees there. I'm like, I don't remember palm trees in King's Landing, but he's wearing like full armor and leather, and there's palm trees. It's like, and the guy asks him like, hey, do you want to like change clothes into something more comfortable? It's supposed to tell you right away that like Ned is super physically uncomfortable with where he is. Like not even just like why he's there, but he in no way does he want to be here. This is not his place.
Yeah, like when they ride in on the carts, he's looking all serious. Arya's looking around, and Sansa's like smiling, like, oh, we're here. And did you notice that big Baratheon, that big stag head on the gates of King's Landing?
Yeah, it's kind of foreshadowing there. Some stags are gonna die. Which one?
All of them.
Oh yeah, well, eventually, yeah.
So when Ned gets there, like, he has this scene with Jaime, and it's like flashback to Robert's Rebellion. Jaime's in there and he's by the throne, and Ned's walking in and just judging him. Like, Ned can't stand him. And Jaime seems really pricked by Ned's words too.
Do you think Jaime was sitting there waiting for him? Do you think he knew Ned was coming in, or is this like his favorite hangout spot?
I think it's his favorite hangout spot.
I don't know. It seemed like Jaime was waiting for Ned, just because like what you're talking about, the parallels back to Robert's Rebellion. He's a Kingsguard. Doesn't he have things to do?
Not really.
I guess not. Besides staying outside Robert's room. I also thought it was really interesting on rewatch, thinking about how Jaime, when he's talking to Ned, I think he's actually trying to feel him out. He's trying to figure out if Ned suspects that Bran got thrown from the tower by a Lannister, because he starts off really mean and he's like challenging Ned, and then he sort of gets nice at the end where he's talking about like how Brandon and
Rickard
didn't deserve their deaths. Like the change in tone throughout it, I think, is Jaime just sort of figuring out, oh, Ned doesn't know what's going on. He's just maybe I can change my tone here and make a friend of him.
Because we know why Jaime killed the Mad King and everything. I kind of think that he was kind of hoping that this Ned Stark thing would maybe work out, and maybe Ned wouldn't see him as just this Kingslayer, because he looks... I believe Jaime when Jaime said that when he killed the Mad King, it felt like justice.
I believe him too. That's probably exactly what he felt. And
for Ned just to be like, is that what you tell yourself at night, boy? Like, Kingslayer, is that what you tell yourself at night?
Oh, that's a dead-on Sean Bean if I ever heard it.
So Ned is kind of like pricking Jaime, and Jaime's face like completely changes. Like, did this motherfucker really just say what I think
he looks wounded. He's like, you're still mad at me about that? It's almost like Jaime was looking for like a little absolution from Ned. Like maybe there was a little something extra to why he shoved Bran out the window. Maybe he was thinking about how Ned Stark judged him guilty, like he rants about later in Harrenhal. I also thought it was really interesting that both times that Ned walks in, he's seen Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne, and we know from the books, George's original outline for the series of Song of Ice and Fire had Jaime doing what he says later in this episode, which is kill his way to the Iron Throne and become king and a major villain of the series. So when you're seeing him sitting in front of the throne and Ned perceiving that as a threat, that's probably true. At this time, George was still playing with the idea of whether or not Jaime would be a villain. Eventually, he changed his mind, and the show mirrored that. But this is sort of a leftover part of that original outline, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So they have this small council meeting, and fun fact, in the back, there's a tapestry, however you say it.
Tapestry.
Tapestry of the Battle of the Trident. And I just noticed that during the rewatch of it, this final rewatch.
Really? That's what it was? It was the Trident?
Yeah.
Which moment? Was it Robert killing Rhaegar?
It was Robert killing Rhaegar.
The moment he dreams of every night.
And it's right over the council table. But what I found interesting about this whole scene is we're seeing what kind of king Robert is.
Yeah.
Like, Robert's not there. It's your new hand's first council meeting, and you're not even there.
And we know where Robert is, actually.
Right.
He's drinking wine and thinking about the good old days while the current times are shoved off to the corner out of sight.
Yeah. And he's bankrupt the realm. The realm is completely bankrupt. Well, not completely, but might as well.
Saying he did it's a little of an overstatement. Littlefinger did it, and because he borrowed money from Tywin and the Iron Bank in order to invest in his own businesses. But yes, Robert was not a fiscally responsible king.
But it's ultimately Robert's fault.
True. Lack of attention let the corruption go wild.
He couldn't be bothered with counting coppers.
It's counting golden dragons, Robert, not the coppers.
Right.
I thought one thing I noticed on this time through that I didn't my first time was that when Ned walks into King's Landing, he's told that Grand Maester Pycelle called this meeting. And then when you get into the meeting, you find out that Littlefinger also wanted this meeting to happen, but Renly didn't. And Varys also didn't. So if you're really paying attention, it tells you the factioning within the small council, which is backed up by where they're sitting. Littlefinger and Pycelle are off to the left. Varys and Renly are off to the right, showing, at least visually, what you're supposed to pick up, that they're not a harmonious group.
Yeah, I like that. I also like how the chairs have like the symbols on the back of them. Like the chair has a hand symbol on the back of it, or a stag symbol on the back of it. I like that. I like that visually.
And Robert's empty stag head. Again, the stag head.
Yeah.
Somebody's a marked man.
He's marked. But we knew that episode 1, right?
We did know that episode 1 from the dire wolf and the stag.
Yeah.
What do you think of Littlefinger taunting Ned so fast?
Do you think that's taunting?
Yeah.
You do?
Well, definitely, because imagine if you walked up to somebody and just said, like a friend of yours that's married, and you're like, man, I'm still really in love with your husband. That's not cool. You can't do that.
That's not, if you look at it like that. Ned, I don't think Ned got it as being taunted.
Well, because Brandon almost killed him, so he's like, well, Brandon won that one. And Littlefinger's saying, like, you didn't really win. Who's still alive?
Okay.
That's sort of the subtext going on there.
Well, I kind of think that Littlefinger is so smooth that I didn't even realize that he was taunting him until you just told me, and I watched it like 20 times.
20 times?
I watched it a lot.
Oh.
How many times have you watched it?
That episode, twice this weekend and once before.
Really? You've never like binge watched all the seasons?
No, I'm usually a read or watch thing once kind of person. Like, people constantly ask me, like, man, how many times have you read these books to pull out this stuff? I'm like, I've read them once. I mean, I read a lot of theories and analyses, and I listen to podcasts. So it's like, it's more than once. But like watching the actual thing, I've only done it once.
I don't believe you.
I've read in like individual chapters for stuff, or like from the Search of Ice and Fire when I need like quotes and stuff. But yeah, I haven't done a reread on it or anything.
You're bugging. Like, I can't even imagine how many times I've read the books or different chapters. And then like Audible is like my alarm clock, like not my how I go to sleep. I put Audible on.
Like I said, I mean, like I have reread them, like individual chapters when I want to, or for like podcasts, or if I need to get context for something I'm writing. But like, not like, have I gone back and be like, okay, I'm cracking a Game of Thrones chapter 1, let's do this. No, that hasn't happened.
So, speaking of the books, I want to talk
Hmm.
about a scene that wasn't in the books, but to me, I loved the scene. It was kind of awkward, but I loved what it meant. And it's with Joffrey and Cersei.
Hmm.
And she's telling him, history is what you make it. Because he's saying, well, it happened like this, like the dog bit me and I just screamed like a little bitch. and she's like, no, you protected. I forget exactly what she said, but it was basically like a lie. What she said was a lie,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like history is what you make it, what you say it is. And I feel like it's like that in the real world, and it's also like that in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a great scene that they added.
I totally agree. I really like the scene, seeing it again. I had forgotten it happened, honestly. And it's so good. And it's something I actually think might be missing from the books, where you don't really understand why Joffrey is such a brat, why he's so entitled. It's like, this is it. Joffrey, multiple times in this conversation, expresses doubt about, like, I don't really want to marry Sansa. I was kind of a coward with that animal thing, like. And she comes back and she like reinforces him, says like, no, you're the best. You can make reality whatever you want when you're king. And it's like, that's not a healthy thing to tell people.
Yeah, and like when Joffrey kills those kittens or whatever he did, killed the cat, killed the mom cat, killed the kittens. I can't remember. But when he does that, Robert like beats the shit out of him. And Cersei's like, if you ever hit him again, I will kill you. But he needed his ass beat. Like he needed it. Like, look how he turned out. Because
I think it was less he needed his ass beat and more he needed less Cersei in his life.
Well, it's kind of both. I'm just saying, like
it is a little bit of both. And I wrote down the quote as I was listening to it, because it was exactly what you're talking about. You are my darling boy. The world will be exactly what you want it to be. And then another line was, truth will be what you make it. That's how you make a sociopath.
Right.
Don't tell people that.
He'll wind up on the Serial podcast.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh no, Serial Joffrey. That would be awful. Actually, no, that'd be amazing. Somebody should do that. Somebody make that.
It would be amazing. Yeah, I watch it.
I also thought it was super interesting in this scene that Joffrey and Cersei both agree that they're going to war with the Starks.
Yes.
But the different tactics to it. And kind of like with Jaime before, where he was on edge talking to Ned, Cersei already knows that somehow what happened with Bran's going to be discovered and they're going to war. Like, they're all very suspicious of why Ned came down there. But then Joffrey, why is he convinced they're going to war? Why, Gray? Why is Joffrey suspicious of the Starks, and why does he want to kill them?
Because he sent the cat's ball.
That's right. He sent the cat's paw. It's right here in the show. He's worried, just like Jaime and Cersei are, that he's going to be discovered for his crimes. So they're all planning to kill Ned ahead of time.
Yeah. And basically, Cersei telling Joffrey that everyone who isn't us is our enemy.
Terrible. Don't tell people that.
Don't tell your kids that, y'all. Don't tell your kids that.
Don't tell them truth doesn't matter. Don't tell them the world will be exactly what it is in your head. And don't tell them
everyone who isn't you is an
enemy. So basically, everyone's out to get you. If they're not, it doesn't matter, because you can imagine it and it will be true. And then also, everything will work out correctly. Awful advice.
Awful parenting.
Yeah.
So at breakfast, Arya wants to stab Sansa in the face.
That's true. I didn't get that subtext. Yeah, she is miming killing Sansa. That makes sense.
Yeah, like she is pissed and she's stabbing up the table. And Ned comes in and, well, first she calls Sansa a liar. So Arya is really struggling with the fact that the butcher's boy has died. And because it's basically like Sansa chose Joffrey over her. And Sansa lied. Well, she didn't necessarily lie, but like she didn't keep it 100.
Lie of omission.
Yeah. So there's that. And so Ned comes in and he sends Arya to her room, and he gives Sansa a doll, and she just she just acts like a complete cunt about it. Like, I haven't played with dolls since I was 8.
And Ned gives the classic, war is easier than daughters.
Right, like
all right, Ned.
And it's true for Ned, because like Ned seems like if Sansa really didn't play with dolls since she was 8, like what was he thinking giving her a doll? Like maybe he was just trying to do a kind gesture, but it reminds me like of absentee fathers that like buy their daughters size shoes that they wore 3 years ago or something.
I think that's true, and I think it also shows, unfortunately, Ned's failing as a parent is that he prefers Arya to Sansa. Like we get the scene where Ned goes to console Arya. We don't get that scene with Sansa. He should have gone to both of them. But
he Sansa lost her direwolf.
So did Arya.
Yeah. But Sansa's is dead. He killed it, and he had to kill it because she just didn't tell the truth.
I can imagine why she was being a jerk about it, because she wants Lady back, and instead Ned gave her a doll. Like
yeah, I'm not saying like she's being bratty, but it's expected.
Yeah.
Because she has been through, as much as I like to shit on Sansa and I don't really like her, she's been through a lot. And like I said before, if she knew that she was going to lose her direwolf, that her direwolf would have been slaughtered, she would not have lied. She would have told the truth of what happened to save Lady. I honestly believe that.
I think that's true. I also don't think that she expected that. But like you're saying, I don't think she expected that Robert would decree that the direwolf had to die. She didn't expect Lady to die. She didn't expect Arya to have to chase off Nymeria. Like she was like, "This is gonna be water under the bridge, right?" It's like no.
And it's like it was a wake up call, and like she's depressed and she's sad and she doesn't know what to make of it. Did she learn from it? Not really. I don't think so.
I think that's a really good point. One thing I really liked about these two scenes, well, there is also the scene afterward where Ned goes to Arya, but it's you can almost see the two daughters as manifestations of what's going on with Ned. So on one end, you have Sansa, who wants to go to King's Landing, who likes Joffrey, who likes all that courtly stuff, and you have Arya, who hates being there, wants to go back to the north, is like his sister Lyanna. So you can see him showing preferential treatment to where he wants to be, the north. Meanwhile, he's really uncomfortable with King's Landing, aka Sansa, at this point.
Oh, I really like that. That's a good comparison.
I also picked up something that was really funny. Arya, when she's back in her room, well, there's two things. The first thing was she lists off all the people she hates. She says, "I hate this Hound, I hate the Cersei, I hate the King, I hate Joffrey." And Ned just kind of goes like, "Yeah, and and then she goes, "I hate Sansa." He's like, wait. You can't hate Sansa. So everyone else. All right.
Everyone else.
But it's interesting he didn't correct her about Robert.
Well, he's pissed at Robert. He's pissed that Robert made him kill Lady. Like, that was so dumb.
The other thing I noticed, I don't know the answer to this, but Ned asks Arya where she got Needle from, and Arya refuses to answer. Why do you think she didn't say Jon?
I think she thought she would get Jon in trouble. Because
Jon's at the watch. How can he be in trouble?
She's a kid. She doesn't understand that. I was thinking that was why. Like, I figured like it was a secret between her and Jon, and she didn't want to tell him that Jon gave it to her. But he knew it was from his forge.
Right. He was just asking who commissioned it. There's only a few people that would do that. He probably knows it's Jon. Yeah. I was wondering if it was because Arya's afraid of showing affection for him.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
She doesn't show affection really for many people. And there's also the fact that Jon being the bastard of the family means that within their family unit, it's like socially weird to be that, to show affection for Jon. Because he's supposed to be from the outside, but he's not, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Ned also in that room with Needle, Ned tells her, "You are a Stark of Winterfell. You know our words." And she says, "Winter is coming."
Dun, dun, dun.
And we know winter is coming. So he says in the winter we must protect ourselves, and basically he's telling her that she needs to have her sisters back.
Mm-hmm.
And she says she doesn't really hate her sister.
No, she doesn't. And he says the line that gets called back last season: "We can't fight a war amongst ourselves."
Yeah. In the books, he says, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
Yep. The Starks are all about family. And that's what's pointed out. I mean, that was the funny part of the thing I pointed out earlier. It's that, like, yeah, hate everyone else. Just don't hate the family.
Yeah.
Even if they're being jerks to you, they were being jerks to each other. Both of them were not showing empathy for their own situations. Like, they both lost their wolves. That's terrible.
Mm-hmm. But I just think in that situation that Arya wasn't wrong on any affront. Like, I don't see how she was wrong.
I think that's a primary thing that's going on in this episode, where the struggle between the truth and what you feel is right versus what's advantageous for you.
Mm-hmm.
It actually was brought up by Septa Mordain in the earlier scene, where Arya gets in trouble for telling the truth and gets sent to her room, but Sansa's acting equally not cool at the same time. Like, Arya's stabbing, but the punishment being metered out is that it's worse to act out and say uncomfortable truths versus live with the political lies.
Yeah, just go with the flow.
And that's something Ned's struggling with.
He's not cut out for King's Landing. Spoiler alert.
Whoa, he doesn't last in King's Landing. Weird.
We have Old Nan and Bran, and Old Nan is telling Bran bedtime stories.
I love this scene.
I do too. It's one of my favorites. I say that all the time. It's one of my favorites, but they are my favorites.
It's so good.
So in the beginning, the crow flies into the window and it's like squawking, and Old Nan is like, "Don't listen to it. All crows are liars."
Dun, dun, dun. Foreshadowing.
So what is that foreshadowing?
It's tough to say. It doesn't really get paid off much, where it seems like the crow or Bloodraven, or the three-eyed crow, I guess is what they call him in the show. He doesn't really lie to Bran, but I think he does mislead Bran about, like, what he's going to get out of what he gets in the future. Like, Bran expects he's going to be able to walk again, that he'll turn into who he was always supposed to be. And that's not what's happening, but he does get something else. So maybe that's what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, I think that Bloodraven is misleading Bran, or the three-eyed crow is misleading Bran. I think he's intentionally misleading him, but for Bran's own good. Like, I think that Bran is able to do certain things, but he can't do these certain things until he's mastered these other things. So I think it's kind of something like that.
Yeah, all crows are liars. The Night's Watch are called crows a lot too. They're all liars, aren't they?
Are they? They're all well, some of them are thieves and robbers and stuff.
Interesting.
So one of the parts I like is Old Nan telling Bran the story. Well, first, Bran says
the first story. No, don't just skip over the first one. In the show, she says, why don't I tell you about Sir Duncan Tall? Those were your favorite. And Bran goes, that's not my favorite. My favorite was the scary ones.
Yes.
And Old Nan seems like sort of miffed at that, which I think means that Duncan the Tall stories are Old Nan's favorites. And there's a book theory. If you don't know who Duncan the Tall is, that he's a character from long ago, from Maester Aemon's time. A lot of people think that Duncan the Tall and Old Nan hooked up, and that Hodor is the descendant of this guy, Duncan the Tall. And that may be why she wants to tell stories about Duncan. It's her long-lost love.
And there's a chapter in A Dance with Dragons where someone, maybe Old Nan, is standing on her tippy toes, kissing a knight as tall as Hodor.
As tall as Hodor. Sir Duncan the Tall. Or just Duncan the Tall. Whether or not he's a knight or not is
top five.
Up for debate. But yeah, I think that was a really cool include for this. They didn't have to mention Duncan the Tall. I don't think he comes up for the rest of the show series. But right here he is. And that's so cool.
So, he says he likes the scary stories. And Onan tells him about the long night. And she tells him that in that darkness, the White Walkers came for the first time. Pause. I don't believe it was the first time, but she says that the White Walkers came for the first time during the long night. I think it was the second, but we won't go into that. You can watch my video on the timeline. Check that out. Shameless plug.
Notice I'm staying quiet.
Joe doesn't agree with me. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Onan tells him about the legends. And this isn't the first time that we're hearing about the White Walkers in the show, because we've actually seen them. And then we saw the Night's Watch deserter confess to the White Walkers, confess about the White Walkers. So basically, the story of the Long Night gets interrupted by Robb.
Correct.
And then Robb tells Bran, one time she told me that we live in the eye of a blue giant.
Named Macumber.
So scale from 1 to 10. Do you think that the universe of Song of Ice and Fire is in the eye of a giant?
Well, that's more of a hippie question. Like, did you ever see Animal House? That scene where it's like, what if like our universe is like one molecule and like the hand of like this enormous being, man?
No,
like maybe I don't know. Or like from Men in Black, the scene with the marbles. Like, I don't know.
So I don't think.
No, probably not. I do like the name Macumber. That's kind of a fun one. There's House Umber, which is the house with a giant on their sigil, a chained giant, and the prefix Mac is often attached to Scottish names like MacDonald and things like that. So you have Mac Umber. You have basically describing the House Umber, maybe like the creator of their house or something like that.
Oh, I never. You're so smart.
I know, it's all these notes.
No, that's really good. I like that.
One thing I really liked about that I didn't pick up on from Old Nan's story this time is that she says that women would smother their children in order to save them from the White Walkers. Now we know from later in the series, spoiler alert if this is your first time through, that is what happens, that the White Walkers take children and convert them into new ones. So if you think back about that, perhaps the smothering the children was to save them from becoming the enemy.
Oh, they don't want to give them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Especially if we're talking about a time when they ruled for like an entire generation. So let's say 20 years. Well, presumably anyone left alive, the White Walkers, the White Walkers would need new ones, especially since they're at war. They would, in order to refill their numbers, so women killing their children could be a defensive measure against that, like a form of resistance.
Yeah, like I'd rather kill my baby than give it to you.
That kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I really love the what you called out earlier, where Old Nan said, like, is this the story you like? And Bran just sort of like in bated breath, like nods his head yes. I'm like, that's the audience. Like, the show is asking the audience, like, do you like the scary stories we're about to tell? And you're supposed to be like, yeah, I do.
Do you know how mad I was that Robb Stark knocked on that door and interrupted that story?
Did you want to hear about the last hero?
I wanted to hear about all of it.
It would have been great if they had done that.
But I like that. I like how it's so mysterious, and it's like you get right there and then they just cut it. Like there's this quote in the books from Sam, mm-hmm. and Sam is like, all of this from the Age of Heroes everything is not true. It can't be. There were knights riding around before there were knights. There's the stories, Night's King and Simon Star Eyes and Bran the Builder, and then he says, we say you're the 996th Lord Commander, but the oldest list I have says such and such. And he says it dates back to And then Jon says, a really long time, and like just cuts off the quote. And I'm like, what? That could answer everything that we want to know if we know what time it dates to, Jon.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have a story, would we?
No, we wouldn't. We would.
Yeah,
Well, we
so
wouldn't have as
calm
much
down.
mystery. We wouldn't have. But I like how they do that. How they get us right there and then they cut it off. And I like how they did that in the show.
So when Robb comes in, he starts asking Bran if he remembers anything about his fall, because he's trying to figure out if there's any proof of it, that from Catelyn's suspicion that the Lannisters had something to do with Bran falling, which is actually impressive for him as a character in this, because from the books, Robb at this time is struggling very hard with being a lord, and he's more a child at that point than a grown-up. And in the show version, Robb is right there. He's in with the with his mother and father trying to figure out the political situation, which is, I think you're supposed to think a lot of Robb at this point.
Yeah, and Robb was on the show one of my favorite characters from the very beginning. Not just because he was hot either.
Not just because, yeah.
Not just because he was hot. No, yeah. So, and Robb also mentions that to Bran, like, you climbed in rain, you climbed in snow, and you never fell. And Bran is like, but I did this time. And I genuinely believe that Bran doesn't remember who pushed him, because when he's falling in the books, when he has his coma dream and he's falling, he actually sees the person that pushed him. He sees Jaime's image float up, and the three-eyed raven is like, no, not that. That is not useful. Put it away. Put it aside. So if he's put it aside, then he can't remember. And he's not supposed to remember.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it.
It is strange that he doesn't remember. But, I guess blocking out a very painful memory. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of
very odd.
There's a lot of things, but I remember when I was rereading his coma dream, which is one of my favorites in the Game of Thrones, and the three-eyed raven specifically telling them like to put that away. That's no use. Put it out of your mind. So in King's Landing, Catelyn and Sir Roderick have come, and they're led away by the gold cloaks, and we find out that actually Littlefinger and Varys are waiting for them in a brothel. And Varys knows about the dagger. So how does Varys know all of this?
Well, this is little birds everywhere, don't you know?
I know, but how did his little birds know about that dagger?
Well, they knew when Catelyn was due to arrive, because the gold cloaks were clearly just sitting there waiting for her.
Yeah. So she came on that boat, so that's easy. It's easy to say, Lady Stark got on a boat out of White Harbor. And it's like that. I understand that, because there's so many people in harbors and on the road to the harbor, like the people working on the ships and all of that. I understand that, but I don't understand how he knew about the dagger.
He knew more about the dagger. He checked Catelyn's hand. He was looking for the wound on it before he asked about the dagger. So he actually knows the details of everything that happened, which is, I'm not sure if they explain in the show how Varys knows that. No, if we ever get the character who's informing.
Yeah, we don't know in the show and we don't know in the books. And it's just like, to me, when I watch this episode back, that is one thing that I have not been able to figure out, is how does Varys know about this dagger? Because it seems to be like a hush-hush thing. Like, the dagger is in Winterfell. So maybe he has little birds in Winterfell. But I still feel like it was a quiet thing that she went into the Godswood and talked to it privately with Theon and Robb and Maester Lewin. So I'm just like, well, what's going on? How does he know?
Maybe Theon. Well,
Theon.
if we're talking about who actually knows what happened with
Oh,
Catelyn,
like maybe Theon told a whore.
Roz. Oh,
And
maybe,
then okay, yeah, that
maybe,
makes sense.
okay.
But that makes sense. That's actually a reason. I could get that. That's reasonable. So then Littlefinger
Makes up the dumbest story I've ever heard.
he pins it on Tyrion.
Like, yeah, Tyrion totally bet against Jaime. It's like you'd have to know nothing about Tyrion and Jaime to believe that story, which I love watching Varys in this scene because he has this look of just like, what are you talking about? While Littlefinger's telling him, he's like, I don't know why you're lying, but this is interesting that you're lying.
So it's like, okay, so now that we know what's going on in like the later episodes, why did we know that that Valyrian dagger actually it did belong to Littlefinger, and then Littlefinger lost it in a bet to Robert, right? And then why is Littlefinger covering for Robert? Does Littlefinger think that Robert?
No, he's covering for Joffrey.
So he's covering for Joffrey for like hopes that maybe Joffrey will show him some favoritism down the road.
Which is what ends up happening. Littlefinger is the one that whispers in Joffrey's ear that he should kill Ned. Littlefinger ends up having a lot of influence over the young king to be. So, yeah, it makes sense that you would do that. I found Varys's role in this even more interesting, though, because not only does he know Catelyn's coming, and he knows about the dagger and that she got cut, so he knows about the attack, the details of the attack, but then he just tells Littlefinger, and they usually are rivals.
Yeah.
Now, knowing that Varys's plan is to keep the realm sort of stable until Viserys and Dany, in the show at least, can come over and conquer, it's interesting that he's looking at this and sort of saying, like, I need to figure out what Littlefinger is doing, so I'm going to give him this juicy piece of information. I'm going to be there when Catelyn shows up and see if I can figure out what the hell this guy is doing.
Yeah, basically, in a nutshell. But it's just like, why does Catelyn not even investigate this shit before believing that it's Tyrion?
She doesn't like Tyrion? I don't know.
Like, it's just so dumb.
I wouldn't say it's dumb. It's Littlefinger has never in his life given her a reason to mistrust her. Now, everyone else knows this. Everyone else knows that Littlefinger is not to be trusted, but he's generally regarded as a friendly person, someone that will always be there to help you. And from their childhood, Littlefinger was always the same way to Catelyn. She hasn't seen his dark side.
I think that was like her first mistake, trusting him.
It was a lifelong mistake, hanging out with Peter Baelish. She never should have been friends with him.
Yeah, and then she convinces Ned to trust him. And it's just like, because when Ned comes to the brothel, she's like, I trust him. It's my childhood friend. Like, and Ned just trusts him anyway, even after, like you said, he was taunting him. So then you're just gonna trust this guy?
No, he trusts Cat.
Ain't enough trust in the world. I don't know. I just would be suspicious of him.
I think Catelyn should probably be suspicious of him based on just how fast he's risen. But when you really look back at her personal experience, there's not many hints for her that Littlefinger is the monster that he actually is inside. Just from her perspective, us as viewers, I mean, we can see everything.
Right.
So it's very easy to us to be like, you're being an idiot. Well, if somebody always lies to you, how are you supposed to know what the truth is? That kind of thing. Yeah.
So Ned and Maester Pycelle get together, and Ned basically they don't really get together. Maester Pycelle Maester Pycelle's just like, you got a raven from Winterfell. And we know that it's that Bran woke up. And then that's when Littlefinger takes Ned to the brothel to find Catelyn. And
Ned almost kills him.
And Littlefinger says, quick tempers, slow minds. And that's true. That's true about the Starks.
It's true about Brandon. at the very least. Many Starks in the history have been exceedingly clever and would have made Littlefinger look silly, but this current generation of Starks, they've been out of high level politics for quite some time, so they come off a little naive.
Yeah, and rugged. So at the wall, Alistair Thorne is a cunt. He's so mean.
But he's mean to the other kids. He's not mean to Jon. He's actually praising Jon.
But he's like praising him in a mean way. Like, you're the least worthless person here. Like, that's still like, that's not a praise. That's still like a dig. It's like, I'm gonna give you your credit, but I'm still gonna dig on you. Like, you're just not as worthless as the rest of these people, but you're still worthless.
Yeah, but for Alistair Thorne, that's like high praise. But Jon doesn't know that because he doesn't know him. He just arrived. Yeah,
so Jon is skilled with the sword, and Jon actually gets threatened by Pip and Grin.
Yeah.
And that other guy. And Tyrion kind of like stops it, and he's like, Jon's like, they're just pissed at me because I'm better than them and I'm making them look bad. And Tyrion kind of humbled him. Like, yeah, you're making them look bad because you were trained by a master at arms and they've never held a sword before.
That's true. We're still in Jon's angsty phase. His hair over his eyes. He's moody. He's angry about everything.
Yeah.
And Tyrion just kind of slaps him around much more effectively than Pip and Gren did. He mentally slapped him around.
Yeah, he did. And I learned that Bran's awake.
But knows nothing.
No help.
Typical Stark.
So the next scene is a really good scene, and it's Cersei and Jaime. And Cersei thinks that Jaime is dumb for pushing Bran out of the window. But Cersei has had all of this time to think about it. I'm sure Jaime thinks it was dumb now. But it happened. And then Jaime says that he will go to war with Robert, and the singers will call it the War for Cersei's Cunt.
What a name that is.
And Cersei slapped him.
And then they got a little frisky.
Yeah.
Could you believe? I was incredulous when I watched this. I was like, this is the first time they've talked about it right now? It's been like months.
No, I don't think it's the first time they talked about it. I think because how it is in the proximity, like, okay, so Ned learns that Bran's awake. Jon learns that Bran's awake. And then they go to this scene with Cersei and Jaime. So I think Cersei has just got the news that Bran's awake now and can tell. I don't think this is the first time they've talked about it.
I think it's the first time they talked about it because Cersei goes like, what do we do? Do we kill him? So they haven't talked about like, this is the first time they've really spoken about like, what are our options with this new information? In the books, they have this conversation almost immediately, and they both agree that like, yeah, we're not going to kill Bran. Like we're just going to sort of hope he dies.
I don't know. I would think they would talk about this.
That's what I think. They should have talked about this many times before. Like what happens if Bran awakes.
But like in King's Landing, there's a lot of ears listening. There's a lot of little birds flying around. So you kind of have to be careful, which I never understood how Cersei could have this romantic relationship with Jaime and have 3 bastard children and no one know about it. Like the people that know about it don't tell Robert. Renly doesn't know about it. Like these people don't know about it.
They must be very sneaky.
They have to be, which is crazy. They must have had help from Varys.
Cersei does say that her early friend in King's Landing was Varys, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was very interesting about this scene is earlier we saw Jaime almost try to like reconcile with Ned in a weird way. Like, okay, maybe reconcile is too strong, but he was at least trying to like reach out to him about what happened in King's Landing with Aerys.
Yeah.
And here we've seen that Jaime has taken that rebuff very poorly. Yeah. And he's instead saying, I'll go to war, I'll kill everybody. So that was almost like a turning point in his character earlier in the throne room where it was reconfirmed that everyone thinks you're a piece of shit, Jaime.
Yeah, like might as well be a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. And here we see him just sort of like embracing the Kingslayer persona. He's like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I'll kill Robert. I'll kill everybody. If Ned says something different, maybe his reaction in this moment is different.
Right. That's true. That's true. Because like it's like probably one scene later where he's standing outside Robert's door, and Robert and Sir Barristan are talking about, you know, the first people they killed. And Robert is like, Kingslayer!
Yeah.
like I don't get that. I don't get that. Oh, Robert is like loathes Jaime, it seems like. But I don't get that in the books. I don't.
That he hates Jaime?
Yeah, I don't feel that.
I think Robert hates where he is more than like in a particular person. Like in that scene, he's not just torturing Jaime, talking about how he killed Aerys. He's also torturing Barristan, who of course Aerys was his king as well, and Barristan actually fought on the other side of the Trident. So telling war stories is really digging it to both of these guys.
I didn't get that. I didn't get him digging at Barristan. I thought he was respectful to him, but to Jaime it was just like, you know, tell me your first kill, not including old men, like, and calling him a Kingslayer. And then he asked Jaime, you know, what is it that the Mad King had been saying? And Jaime was like, what he'd been saying for hours, burn them all. And it looked like to me physical pain on Jaime's face to say that. Like to me it looked like he was having a hard time saying
that's
that.
True. And Robert looked completely floored.
Yeah.
It's almost like maybe they were planning on revealing that a little bit sooner than what happened at Harrenhal. Because like, why do you have Robert have that kind of reaction? Why do you have Jaime say that so early if it's not going to be relevant? I mean, it's relevant to Jaime's arc because it starts you down the path of maybe Jaime isn't exactly the prick we thought he was from the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. Which, to me, I kind of like that we didn't really get the other side of Jaime until later, because that's one character where I really did not like him. Until I got to see his point of view. And once you get to see his point of view, and you get to know, and you get the bath scene at Harrenhal, and all of his scenes with Brienne, it's like, it's not like he doesn't do like a 180, but you have empathy for him. And earlier I didn't have any, and I just love how his character is.
It's why Jaime is considered in the fandom one of the strongest arcs that George has written into the story.
So in the Dothraki Sea, the Dothraki and Daenerys, they're just trudging along the Great Grass Sea. And Daenerys has traded in her silks, and she's wearing Dothraki rough spuns, I guess you would call that.
Leathers, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and leathers. And Viserys isn't. Like, Viserys is still wearing his clothes from her wedding night, and he's not adapting to life on the Dothraki Sea. And he basically gets put in check.
That's true. I wasn't sure if it was the Great Grass Sea, because it looked like they were in bamboo. It looked like they were in a bamboo forest. I'm like, what are they doing? Have they gone this far east? I don't think Vaes Dothrak is that far east.
Well, it's supposed to be grass, Joe.
It doesn't look like grass. It looks like bamboo. It looks like trees. But anyway,
what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, well, what it's supposed to be. I love seeing Viserys here, not just for a very different reason. If you remember from the RLJ reveal in the last season, it was last season, right? I think it was last season.
Yeah.
Even the shirt, the overcoat with the dragon on it and the hairstyle, Viserys is straight copying Rhaegar the whole way. He's dressing exactly like him. That's the outfit.
That's the
Like,
same dagger and same sword too.
right? Did he like when Rhaegar died? Did he ransack his room? Like, what are you doing?
I think we could say that maybe he wants to be the last dragon. He's always saying he's the dragon. But I think the more reasonable explanation is that the budget for CGI and everything was so high that they just had to recycle some things. Because I cannot lie here. Like, I cannot lie. I have to keep it 100. I was disappointed with Rhaegar.
You didn't think he was hot enough?
Not that I didn't think he was hot enough. I didn't like that damn wig. That wig was like a Party City original.
Okay.
Like the cheapest wig in Party City. And it was just like Viserys, but older. And I mean, I guess Daenerys does describe Rhaegar like Viserys, because like when she sees him in the House of the Undying, she says at first she thought it was Viserys, but then it was Rhaegar. His eyes were darker, or indigo or something, and it was just like, I don't know. I expected, like when I saw Rhaegar for the first time on TV, I wanted to see him in black armor with rubies in his chest plate. Like I didn't want to see Viserys' old costume from Dothraki Sea on him.
But it was Rhaegar's old costume that Viserys was wearing. He was the original. You wanted to see basically Chris Hemsworth, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
You wanted Thor.
I don't know. I think like I digress.
Well, I actually was not disappointed, and let me tell you why. Because a big part of the Song of Ice and Fire is that stories grow in the telling, that like characters who are not that great end up becoming heroes in their stories and things like that. And you hear that Rhaegar was supposed to be like the perfect, most awesome silver prince of all time, and that Lyanna was supposed to be like this like great beauty and all these kind of things. And I actually found it more realistic that Rhaegar just kind of looked like Viserys a little bit, and he wasn't like a super, he wasn't a comic book character. And Lyanna, the actress who played her, is very, very pretty, but like if you hear the story, she's described as like the most beautiful woman in the kingdoms, and it's like, well, no, she wasn't. She looked like Arya.
Yes.
A lot of the descriptions we have from Rhaegar from the books are from characters who are or were like physically in love with him. Like Cersei, she thinks about him all the time, like he was the greatest person that ever walked. John Connington does the same, and he's clearly in love with him too.
Yeah. True.
But anyway, yeah, I wasn't disappointed. I guess to get back to the scene a little bit, I love the Jorah moment there, where Viserys gives Jorah an order, and he just like looks at him, looks back at Daenerys, and is like, no, I'm good.
Well, it's because Varys is not someone that you want to serve. Like,
no.
He doesn't inspire loyalty or anything like that. Like, he's a cunt. That's going to be the word of the day.
Yeah, you're going to say that one a lot. But that theme actually connects back to the rest of the episode, like we saw from Robert. If you compare Jorah's reaction to Barristan and Jaime, it's almost the same. They look at him. They're looking at Robert with contempt.
Yeah,
like they hate doing what they're doing, and the same almost with Jon. What Tyrion's verbal slapdown of Jon is basically saying, like, you're not acting like a good leader. You're acting like a spoiled brat.
Yeah,
and like we're seeing from Viserys and Robert. So
and later in that episode, Benjen kind of like tells him again, like, you get what you earn on the wall. Like,
exactly.
You're not better than anyone. You get what you earn. And I think that echoes back to episode 2, where on the King's Road at the crossroads, where the Starks are kind of humbled. Like everyone is getting humbled to what their position is now. Like, I know you were this for a long time, but now let me humble you. And I feel like with Viserys was humbled. Like, your Daenerys is the Khaleesi now, and these people aren't gonna have you choking her up and stuff.
That's true. I also like if you compare what happened with Jon with what happened with Viserys here. Basically, Viserys, what happened to him was what happened to Jon, except no Tyrion showed up to save him.
He
just got the crap kicked out of him, and then nobody stood up for him afterwards like Tyrion did for Jon. Maybe it's sort of, if you're an RLJ believer, which you all should be right by now, like that's just the God's honest truth. But if you're looking at Jon, his trajectory upwards, it's interesting how much he parallels Dany in these moments, and how much you're supposed to be thinking of how often he's compared to other Targaryens. And this is a very subtle one early on, but yeah, those are basically parallel situations that went different ways because of an external character. Jorah maybe should have been the Tyrion in that situation, but decided that Viserys wasn't worth it and went towards the Khaleesi.
Yeah. So, and then like at the wall, like I said, with Benjen telling Jon, you know, here a man gets what he earns when he earns it. But after that, Benjen says, we'll speak when I return.
Nope.
So this is the second time that a Stark says, we'll speak when I return, and then they don't return.
Just don't say that to Jon.
Yeah, specifically to Jon, because Ned says, we'll talk about your mother when I get back, I promise. And he never comes back. And then Benjen tells him, we'll talk when I come back, and he never comes back.
Nope, neither does Benjen. Just don't say it. It's just one of those things. Like, they have to know they're on a TV show. If you say that, obviously, it can't happen.
Yeah. So, Tyrion, so we have Tyrion, Yoren, and Benjen and kind of talking. So Tyrion and Yoren, they get along. They both seem like drunks that can take jokes and like jokes. So Tyrion doesn't believe in ghouls and giants and White Walkers. But it seems that Benjen does. Benjen knows that the White Walkers exist.
He does. He's also taking a very different tone with Tyrion. With Jon, he was being the teacher, but once we get to Tyrion, he like lets his guard down, and he's just like being himself, and he's snapping at Tyrion, and he's kind of depressed about what's going on. It's like, it's very interesting seeing these two different sides of the character back to back.
Yeah, and
they also call this out. I think in a different part of the scene where Tyrion has almost the same conversation with Aemon and Lord Commander Mormont, where it's revealed that, oh, the Watch has learned what the Night's Watch deserter, I think it's, God, what's his name in it? It's Will. What Will said to Ned Stark. They've taken it to heart. So the leadership of the Night's Watch at this point does know the others have returned, or the White Walkers.
Yes. And Maester Aemon says that his exact words are like, the winter will be long and dark things will come with it. And the Lord Commander, which they probably learned from Benjen, which I'm sure Benjen told them what Ned told him, which was that he confessed about seeing the White Walkers. And because the Lord Commander is like, he confessed it up until his head was removed. Like, he never retracted the statement.
Yeah.
And in the show, you can hear the White Walker theme music playing behind while they're having this conversation.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I picked it up just this time.
You pay attention to the music.
So like on these Overwatch ones, like I'm pausing, I'm watching a scene, and I'm pausing and I'm writing it down. Like, I don't want to miss anything.
It's interesting that how quickly Aemon is, because he's never been beyond the wall. He would never see these things. Well, as far as we know, he's the Maester, so supposedly he stays in the castle. But I wrote a theory, I made a video about this, where I argued that Maester Aemon went to the wall specifically because he thought the White Walkers were coming, because Rhaegar believed he was the prince that was promised.
Yeah, Aemon believes in all of that. Like, Aemon, I won't say Aemon had the same obsession that Egg had, but Aemon definitely believed in prophecy. He read prophecy. He had dragon dreams. Or no, I don't think he had.
He dreamed of dragons.
Yeah, he did dream of dragons. But like a lot of the things that he says, not in his chapters because he doesn't have chapters, but in the books and on the show, a lot of the things that he says leads me to believe that he, one, believes that there is a prince that was promised. And if he believes that, then what could that prince that was promised be coming to save them from?
Right. Like, you don't need a savior if there's no problem.
Yeah. So I believe he knows about the White Walkers. I believe he's a lot in tuned to a lot more things than we actually know. So when we go back to the Dothraki Sea, Daenerys and Drogo, they're all in love and she's pregnant. And when Jorah finds out that she's pregnant, like he's like, I have to ride to Qohor, like I'll be back. So he's informing on her. We know that now that he's informing on her. And I find it very interesting that he's already chosen her over Viserys, but he still informs on her.
Yeah, internally he hasn't given up on the pardon that he's trying to get from Varys. He still loves Westeros in the north more than Daenerys. Eventually that changes.
Yeah. So there's really not much to talk about in the Dothraki Sea.
Oh no, there was something to talk about. There was something really funny that happened. Did you catch how her handmaiden discovered that Daenerys was pregnant?
She just grabbed her tit.
Just grabbed her boob. It's like, this is bigger than normal. And that's something that, this is something that I find very funny. HBO really turned up the sex for the series. Like in the Littlefinger and Catelyn scene, they have girls walking around topless. Yeah. But in the books, this is one of those times where actually they turned it down. In the books, Daenerys often has sex with her handmaidens, and they like teach her how to pleasure Drogo basically by like trying it out on them, I guess. It's all over the place. And in this one, this is like the only hint you get when she just goes like, oh, little boob grab.
Yeah. Like they do that little thing with Dorea in the second episode, but it's not like where basically Daenerys, like if she can't sleep, her handmaidens will get in the bed and pleasure her until she sleep. Like,
it happens constantly.
So yeah,
she has bed warmers. Not a thing in the show. I'm guessing Emilia Clarke just said no to that one.
I mean, at some point you gotta draw the line. Like at some point you have to draw the line.
Yeah, Daenerys' chapters for quite a while are almost like bad porn.
Pornhub.daenerys.com.
Yeah, Bran's watching that channel.
Poor Bran.
Poor Bran. He has to watch all the weird sex. But yeah, the pregnancy part is interesting. And just that Jorah, he goes to Qohor. That's so far out of the way.
Right. And I'll find the Khalasar. Like, you're not hard to miss. Like, I'll find you guys when I come back. Like, you can't go anywhere else. There's no one you could send a Raven. No way you could send a Raven or a Rider.
Yeah, and Qohor's not even on the sea. Qohor's inland.
Well,
like, hey man, find a better port.
Maybe he just said a name. Maybe he wasn't going there. Maybe that's just what he told them.
Oh, interesting. Nobody noticed that Jorah just sort of disappeared during that time.
Especially not Daenerys.
Well, Daenerys at this point has, as they show, she's just trying to learn the language and get used to the food.
Yeah. Which I feel bad for her because that food looked disgusting on their wedding night. So, I don't know. So, Tyrion and Jon back at the wall. Tyrion pisses off the edge of the wall like he said he was going to do. But Tyrion and Jon, they're friends.
They're bros.
They're bros. And Jon asks Tyrion to help Bran and give him a message for Jon. And basically that, Jon hopes he's okay and he wants to be with him again and hopes he can come visit him and all this stuff.
It's a very sweet moment between the two. Especially because like Jon's story up so far has just been disappointment.
I was gonna say sad.
It's pretty sad at this point. He's like, I'm gonna join the Night's Watch. It's gonna be awesome. Jaime tells him, just kind of laughs at him like, yeah, man, good luck with that. He expects he's gonna be best friends with Benjen on the wall, and Benjen not only gives him the cold shoulder, he's also like, I gotta go.
Right, immediately.
He almost gets beat up by his brothers. Alistair Thorne's being a dick to him, but not as much a dick as he could be. And this is like the one nice moment in Game of Thrones for Jon so far.
Right.
It might be the last one.
Yeah.
until what's her name shows up.
Ygritte.
Until Ygritte shows up. It's like this long, awful time for Jon.
Yeah, it is. But it gets better, thank God.
One thing that I thought was excellent about the scene between Jon and Tyrion is that, it comes back later when Jon eventually goes to meet Daenerys and try to beg for her help, and Jon and Tyrion have this friendship that has lasted all this time. And that's one of the things that that's missing from Ned, that he's most upset about at this point, that the relationship that he forged with Robert has deteriorated so far. And those are the kind of bonds and friendships that normally hold the realm together. And we're seeing them fracture and break apart. And that's part of the reason why Westeros is descending into war. What we're seeing between Jon and Tyrion is like the base level, people empathizing and becoming friends and helping each other out, even if there's nothing in it for them.
Yeah.
It's little things like this.
So the next scene, we get to meet our favorite dancing master, Syrio Forel. And he's coming to teach Arya how to water dance, how to use her sword needle. So I don't really have anything like to pick apart about this scene. There's only like, yeah, she's meeting Syrio. Syrio seems really cool. I love the way he talks. But the biggest part of this scene to me is when Ned comes in at the end and he's looking at it, and the swords are wooden that they're fighting with, but he's hearing steel. And there's like this expression on his face where like he's remembering something. And I think it's Tower of Joy that he's remembering in the sword fight with Arthur Dayne.
Yep.
But what do you think?
Well, we actually know what he's thinking about. He not only was he thinking about the Tower of Joy, he was remembering Lyanna, because his sister Lyanna was very much like Arya growing up. He was comparing Arya to Lyanna in his head. Although Lyanna never was allowed to officially get sword lessons or carry a sword like Arya is here, she did know how to use it. She beat up the squires at the tourney at Harrenhal. And he compares these are lines that were cut, but Ned explicitly links Lyanna to Arya, which helps out for RLJ stuff later. Which I understand why they can't do it in the show, because the way it's presented in the books, it's kind of buried. It's like kind of throwaway lines, so you can kind of overlook it. But with how much they're compressing everything, if you're making these comparisons early on, readers will pick up on it. That's why a lot of the RLJ clues were pushed off until later seasons.
Yeah, I think it's the wolf's bloodline isn't in there, but I think that's a clue to RLJ, of course. And how Arya is like Lyanna is RLJ, of course, because Arya and Jon look alike.
And then they say that Arya looks like Lyanna, therefore Jon looks like Lyanna. Whoa, RLJ.
RLJ. All the evidence is there.
It's all there. I also love that the swords changing to the metal ones. Ned really has horrible memories of Robert's Rebellion. This is a thing that he dreads thinking about. He really, in his internal monologue, pushes it off entirely. So that even hearing wooden swords clash, that they're flashing him back to war, it shows what he's thinking about this entire episode. He thinks he's in trouble. He tells Arya, he literally tells her, we can't fight a war amongst ourselves. Subtext, we're going to be fighting other people. We can't internally strife at the same time.
And he says it. He says it. We've came to a dangerous place.
Yeah. It's kind of sad. Ned knows what's happening and really is struggling to stop the wheels that are turning, and just finds himself in over his head.
Yeah. But overall, I think it is a great episode, like every Game of Thrones episode, give or take. Because there's a couple that I'm just like, what the hell? But this one is a great episode. And I know that Syrio Forel is supposed to have a bald head and all that, but I love the actor that plays Syrio
Oh my
Forel.
God. He's so good.
Yeah, he's awesome. And like, I can't picture Syrio looking any other way.
He's such a nice guy too. Actually, hang on, I'm going to tell a quick story real fast.
Sure.
At Con of Thrones, the actor that played him, he was actually there, like signing autographs and talking on panels and stuff. And my favorite memory of him was I ended up going to a party and the door opened and he's sitting there with sunglasses on and a drink in his hand. It's being like a Walmart greeter to everyone that's walking in. I'm like, you are my favorite person at this moment. He's a very sweet man.
He seems very down to earth. Like everyone that was at Con of Thrones that were like talking about what happened, they were like saying, you know, like how cool he was and that he gave water dancing lessons.
Oh, he did. He's an incredible guy. One thing for the episode though, I think George Dan and Dave were asked by Maisie Williams if Syrio Forel died, and they said yes, he did. But if you watch this episode back and compare him with Jaqen H'ghar, there's a lot of similarities to the way they talk. Like, for instance, that they both call Arya a boy despite knowing that she's a girl, and just like the familiarity and the way she connects with them and the way she doesn't with many other characters. You're supposed to wonder, I think, if they're the same person, which is a nice little layer and a sub thing to think about while the season's going on.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on my channel and overwatching this episode with me. I appreciate it.
Of course, Gray. It's always a great time making these videos and actually rewatching something.
Yeah, at least once. Jeez.
At least, yeah. Second time. No, these were the second and third times I've seen this episode, but it was a lot of fun.
Let the people know where they can find you.
Okay, so you can find me on YouTube at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JoeMagician. You can find me on the Maester Monthly podcast. We just started making them again. We're back. There's a new one up. You can find me on Watchers on the Wall, where I'm a feature writer for them. I write articles bringing book content to show watchers to inform you of the sort of things that are being left out that enhance the story. You can also find me on Twitter at JoeMagician42, on my blog, clankingdragon.wordpress.com, and the Song of Ice and Fire board on Reddit, where I am a moderator.
He has a lot of titles.
They just keep coming.
I joke him about that all the time. Like, I compare him to Daenerys. Joe Magician, Breaker of Chains, Father of Dragons.
Father of Dragons. Yeah, there we go. Joe of the Great Grass Sea.
Joe of the Great Grass Sea. Thanks to everyone that's watching. Thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the sweet summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children. Have a good day.